Hi, it's Erin from the Witch of Saturn, and today I'm here to do a VR to Tarot Magpie's decks for Sagittarius season. So we are well into Sagittarius season now. We go through 7 decks that correspond to Tarot Magpie's prompts about Sagittarius. So the first is Sagittarius as mutable fire, and for this I chose Prisma Vision's new anniversary edition that is holographic. This is a deck by James R. Eads. Mutable fire is changeable. It is, you think about Sagittarius as the bearer of a torch, where a fire could be lit from another fire and carried elsewhere. And there's something about this deck with its holographic nature and foiled details that reminds me of mutable fire, of this kind of changeable, shifting flame. Even though this deck has a very blue background, to me it is very fiery. Sagittarius also considers the big picture, which is something that James R. Eads from Prisma Visions has definitely done, as each card in the minors lines up and connects to the next, building a beautiful image that transcends the individual card and considers the larger picture, which is very Sagittarian. The next prompt is for Jupiter, Sagittarius's ruling planet. And for this, I chose the Quiet Rebel Tarot. This is by Thurman. So the Quiet Rebel embodies the archetypes that are very present in when we think about Sagittarius or astrology in general, or when we think about Jupiter as a teacher that embodies this larger vision. Sagittarius is also a sign that is extremely rebellious, needs freedom to expand and grow. There's also something very big, outgoing, and fun about Jupiter, and the opportunity that it brings always reminds me of a Santa Claus type of energy, and this deck definitely has that, like the Ace of Swords spark of madness, right? With this guy laughing and this light bulb and lightning bolt kind of shooting out of his fingertips. I think that this deck is very expansive and embodies that archetypal nature of the teacher, as well as brings in this fun and bold energy of, you know, the bigger the better with Jupiter. Next is a deck for Sagittarius as the archetype of the explorer or the wanderer. And for this, I chose the Forhaxa Tarot by MJ Cullinane. And this to me is a very fiery Sagittarian type of deck that, also because it's this realm of the Fae, seems to me like it really embodies that explorer of another realm, or a wanderer, someone who travels into these other worlds outside of their comfort zone. I mean, you can just see here the fire that she's holding in her hands coming out of her head, and fighting off these demons, kind of like this fairy tale type of realm that's just big and bold and larger than life, that we see and feel in the archetype of Sagittarius as the explorer or the wanderer or the seeker of freedom and potential. Next is Sagittarius as the Temperance card. So we see here in the 14th card of the Major Arcana, in Temperance, we see a blending and alchemizing of this water, the earth to water, with 1 foot on the ground, 1 foot in the water, and the pouring of the water, the alchemizing between 2 cups, where we see the water kind of almost flowing upwards. And this is a card of moderation, of finding this middle path, and of tempering something from, you know, this is how we temper steel, from extreme heat to extreme cold, and the strength that builds, that leads us from the 2nd line of the majors into the 3rd line of the Major Arcana. For Temperance, I chose Scarab and Dahlia Tarot. This to me is a very Sagittarian deck. I mean, you can even see that here in the Eight of Wands, right? This horse flying through the air. There's something about this collage style that seems very bold and Jupiterian to me. And the reason I chose this for Temperance is because in this deck, we're literally, with this collage style, seeing how we can take these unique images. Oh, look. It's Temperance that I'm paused on. We can take these unique images and blend them into something new through this art style, where all of these smaller pieces come together to make a larger whole and to find a balance and alchemy between them. Like, it's so fiery. So yeah, it just really seems like it embodies this kind of like holiday season to me for some reason, that I knew, like, to me this is just a very Sagittarius season deck, and I think that it works really well for the Temperance archetype to find this kind of balance. Even in collage sometimes can get too busy, it can be too much, and I think that there's a really nice balance and clarity that comes through in Scarab and Dahlia that I just am very happy with this deck. I also love the kind of celestial themes. Seems very expansive to me and brings in the energy of the universe in a way that the Sagittarian archetype also embodies. Next, we have Sagittarius as the Eight of Wands. Here we have Mercury and Sagittarius in this decan. So the mutable decans will always be the end of the suits. 8, 9, and 10 will always be the mutable signs. And then wands are fire, air is swords, earth's pentacles, and cups are water. So right there you'll know. And then, you know, the middle 5, 6, and 7 cards will always be the fixed signs, and the beginning 2, 3, and 4 cards will always be the cardinal decans. So with Eight of Wands, we have Mercury and Sagittarius. Now Mercury in Sagittarius is in its detriment. Mercury is at home, it rules over the sign of Gemini, which you can see here. And then Sagittarius is on the same axis as Gemini in opposition to it. So when Mercury is that far away from its home, it's considered to be in detriment, where it doesn't function optimally. And that's because Sagittarius and Jupiter are very expansive, big, thinking about the bigger picture, whereas Mercury wants to hone in on the details. It wants to get curious about all of the little pieces and figure those out. And it doesn't exactly feel comfortable in a sign where we're asked to see things on a much larger scale. Mercury is a personal planet, and Gemini being so close to the beginning of the zodiac, the evolution that we see the zodiac go through from Aries all the way to Pisces. By the time we get to Sagittarius, we're into like these bigger themes, right? We've already gone through death in Scorpio. So what lies beyond that? How can we then expand? Once something has died, then the seed, like if we think about a plant dying, the seed then gets carried and transferred and goes out into the world to start something new. And that's what we see happening in Sagittarius. So Mercury prefers to be more in the day-to-day realm of what's happening and kind of the living, so to speak, rather than in these transpersonal, really larger, universal archetypes of the later signs in the zodiac. So for the Eight of Wands and Mercury in Sagittarius, I chose the Lilifer Tarot. This is, to me, such a good deck for this decan, because Lilifer's kind of like this world where you're going into these really kind of intuitive images that were painted very quickly because of this watercolor style. The creator Marion Costentin has even said that she likes to work quickly, that this just kind of like flows through her. So it's a very fast moving deck, the same way that the Eight of Wands is very swift and fast moving. And there's a lot of these little details in Lilifer that are not so easy to read or interpret. It's kind of like one of my hang-ups with the deck. Like some of the numbers are a little bit different. They're not the normal Roman numerals that we're used to. I think they're more Arabic numerals. So a lot of the symbols, kind of the details of that can easily get lost. Like the astrological associations aren't in the same places. There's a couple of the astrological associations in this deck that are, I think, misprinted in 2 of the minors. And then in the courts, there's the astrologies all over the place. I actually had to email the creator about it because it was driving me nuts. And she really said that a lot of it was intuited, which I do have a hang up with when it comes to astrology. But for this purpose of the 8 of Wands, it makes so much sense to kind of like lose those details in this bigger wash of the bigger picture energy of the card. And what she does is invites you into, instead of getting hung up on the symbols, to go into the art and to have more of an intuitive experience with the deck in that way. For the 9 of Wands, which is the moon in Sagittarius, here we're looking at this energy of protection, right? In the Thoth, the key word here is strength. We see someone who's clearly been through it but has come out the other side, still triggered and in that state of hyper arousal and reactivity, hypervigilance. But the priorities here are protecting and defending what has been established, what already exists, and what's important. So it's a very defensive card, a card of boundaries, of putting in those protective boundaries, as we've seen some battles and we're still on the defense, still looking for those threats and being very tuned in and sensitive on an emotional scale, which the moon represents, but in this bigger picture type of way that we find in Sagittarius. And for this deck, I chose Tarot of the Huntress by Kara Small. This is a deck that embodies the archetype of Artemis, who is also the archer and a nurturer and protector. And I thought that this was just so perfect for 9 of Wands, moon in Sagittarius. We see here in this curated art deck that it really does take that kind of bigger picture and connects us to it in a really emotional way through the tarot and through the archetype and imagery associated with Artemis the Huntress. Artemis is also closely associated with Selene and the moon, and so this to me is just very on the nose for 9 of Wands, moon in Sagittarius. I mean, look, here she is, she's got her arrows, she's got the moon on her headpiece, just ready to defend and protect. And then finally we have the 10 of Wands decan, which is Saturn in Sagittarius. And I wasn't pointing it out, but here on the casting sticker, which is my chart, you can see I have Sagittarius in the 12th house. And then here are the decans that, the decans of Sagittarius, Mercury, the moon, and Saturn. So if you have, you can look to your own chart to see if you have planets in those decans. I have Uranus, which is the Fool, in 8 of Wands, which, you know, says a lot about my inclination to jump into things without thinking sometimes. And then I have Neptune, which is the Hanged One, in the sign of the 10 of Wands. So this is another layer and way that you can explore your own chart. In the 10 of Wands, this is a card of oppression. Saturn brings a lot of responsibilities, heaviness, and burdens. In the sign of Sagittarius, we see this kind of like taking on the weight of the world, of others, in a way that's really aligned with our moral purpose and compass in terms of what we believe to be fair and right and just for everyone. In this card, we see that we're almost there. We've almost pushed the boulder all the way up the hill. It's almost to the other side. Like you're tired and you're burdened from carrying all of these wands, but all you have to do is just push through to the finish line and you're already there. This can also be a card of, you know, taking on too much of the excess of Jupiter and Saturn coming in to say, like, you can't continue to carry this. You need to offload some of this. Like, what is the best way to be carrying this? Can you put some of these down? Is all of this necessary? Can you offload it to someone else? What's a better way to structure this and to unburden yourself after you've taken on too much and bit off more than you can chew? For 10 of Wands, I chose the Illustrated Herbiary deck by Maia. There's something very Sagittarian to me about this artwork, and these colors I think really just show like this boldness of Sagittarius, kind of fiery in nature and expansive between these fiery colors and the purple. And something about having these plants to work with. On each card there's an herb or a plant, starflower, and then a keyword, finding grace. So to me, this shows like a very practical, grounded, rooted way, which is very much Saturn, to work with these expansive energies. Like, how can we work with the expansion of the natural world in a very practical way to help ease our stress and our burden that we see in the 10 of Wands? And I think calling in support from herbs is a wonderful way to do that. I think that these keywords, distill yourself, start fresh, really tap your resources, really give you a path forward, like let magic in, a way to keep going, to push through, to ease some of those burdens in the 10 of Wands by working within the structure and framework of the natural world, which Saturn is what makes everything manifest. It is the last boundary of what is tangible and what we can see with the naked eye, and kind of defines and delineates everything that's real from everything that's not. And what better way to work with that than in the natural world with these very real herbs? Thank you so much for tuning in. This was my response to Tarot Magpie's decks for Sagittarius season. I hope that you enjoyed. If you did, please remember to like and subscribe, comment on this video. I also have a whole series on the casting sticker that Jamie Sawyer and I collaborate on. If you'd like to get your chart printed in one of these, you can order it on her website, or if you'd like to learn more about how to use the sticker to understand your astrological birth chart through the lens of tarot, please check out that series. Have a wonderful rest of your Sag season. Enjoy the holiday, and I will see you next time.